What's going on, you guys? It's Mr. Potty, and today we are driving the 1970 454 Chevelle SS. Alright, you guys, so let's get right into it. I'm gonna go over to you this car, what it was, how it came to be. This is the 1970 Chevelle 454 SS, and for some reason in this game I noticed the front end of the car does not have the proper badging, because the 454 model of this car had the SS badging. I'm gonna go over with you guys the specs on this car, give you some history on this car. This car is one of 3 generations made. This car just so particularly happens to be the 2nd generation car, and this particular car is the 1970 Chevelle 454 LS6 car. This particular car had only 4,475 models produced in 1970, so this car is actually quite rare and really sought after. What led to this engine size and this model was just a huge showdown between car companies and them trying to come out with bigger and better. And this just so happened to be one of the biggest. Ouch. When I say 454, 454 is the cubic inch size of the block of the engine. That's cubic inches in size of the motor, which is a huge motor compared to most engines made today that are, well, 4 cylinders. This is a gas guzzling V8. With that in mind, the gas mileage on this car in the back in 1970 with the original motor, this isn't the original car, by the way. I've done things to this car. I've modified it, upgraded it, and whatnot. The original car got 8.5 city and 13 miles per gallon highway, which is absolute crap today's standards. As you can tell, we're looking at the car right now. This particular car, as far as the way it looks, the main color that it is, that silver color, is actually called Cortez silver, and the black stripings would be labeled as tuxedo black stripes. The wheels that you saw on the car were the only wheels offered that year in 1970. They were super sport wheels, and their dimensions were 14x7. It was the only wheel offered that year, which makes this car even more rare for what it had. This particular car also, it should have, in this game it was not, if you looked at the front end, if you haven't you can look back, does not have the proper badging on the front end of the car. It does not have SS Super Sport put on the grille on front of the car, which it should. All 454s, there you go, look, of that model had SS written on that middle stripe in the middle of the grille, that painted part, and it does not have it on this car, which is, I'm surprised they didn't get that right. As far as the interior is concerned, these are very retro gauges. Back in this time frame, the way they gave the numbers for the gauges, the way the gauges operated were different. Quality of them were made different. As you can see, the clock, which is the gauge all the way to the right, that's the clock. It gives, you know, hours, minutes, and even seconds with all those little dials, those arms. That's how they did it. You know, it was very simple, basic, simplistic interior. Nothing big and fancy, just basics. You can also see on top of the hood is something that keeps opening back and forth. That is what they call cowled induction. Back in the day, they were looking for mean and lean and the most power they could get out of the car as much as they could, and so in their mind, every bit of air that they could get on that engine was more power to the car. So they had cowl induction, which would hit the filter and the carburetor from the hood, giving it more power. And this is a carbureted motor too. This isn't fuel injected. That's also another big difference from motors back when and motors now. Most of them, if not all of them, are fuel injected now. This was a carbureted motor. So as far as this motor is concerned, this is an LS6 model. Now, back in the 70s too, they had an LS5 model, which only put out 390 horsepower and 500 foot-pounds of torque. I'm sorry, no, 360 horsepower with 500 foot-pounds of torque. This just so happens to be the 450 horsepower with the 450 horsepower model with the 500 foot-pounds of torque. As far as the speed, this thing could get up to 107 mile an hour in 13.1 seconds on the quarter mile, which is fast for back then, but now we see a lot better. But the reasoning behind that to be such a big number is because this car, well, it weighed 3,800 pounds. It's a heavy car. In fact, I'd say most cars were heavier back then. The transmission, let's go over the drivetrain on this car. The transmission back then, you had 4 options for this car. You could get a, not for the SS model, but just for the overall Chevelle. Okay. You could get a, you could get a 3-speed manual. You could get a Muncie M21 4-speed manual. Muncie is, that's what they called it, the M21, which is what this one has. It has a 4-speed. Now, this game I have 6 gears, but I upgraded the car, but back then that was not offered in this car. It was a close ratioed 4-speed Muncie M21 transmission. It was a heavy-duty transmission. And if you wanted something even better, for say the drag strip, they offered the M22 transmission, which is just a beefed up version. Very heavy duty. This is very heavy duty transmission in this car. So let me repeat that. When you got this car from the factory, if you got a manual, you got a 4-speed. This one being encased in the game, a 4-speed. They also offered 2 other forms of an automatic transmission. We'll just say that, but they labeled them as Power Glide and a Hydromatic transmission. Hydromatic, automatic transmissions, if you don't know already, even in the modern era, are more expensive than standard manual transmissions. This transmission was like, in order to get this automatic Hydromatic transmission, you were going to pay an extra $500 something, which is a lot of money back in 1970. It was a buttload. So it was actually considered a luxury to have it back then. And nowadays, you know, anybody who's a car enthusiast, I'd say most people, they want, you know, a manual transmission. This car had a very tight gear ratio, as I previously stated, and the gear ratio with the M21 4-speed transmission, which this is, goes as followed. Your first gear ratio was a 2.20, your second was a 1.64, your third was a 1.28, and your fourth was a 1.00, and your reverse was a 2.27. So close gear ratio. They were very close geared, meaning they had the same, I don't know how to put that, bandwidth. They went out as far as how much speed you'd gain on each gear, about even. The engines in these cars, from what I understand, were underrated as well. It was said that the 454 put way over more than what the factory specs said that it did. It said that the car put out around 450 horsepower, when in actuality people were finding that it was putting way over 500 horsepower down and close to 600 foot-pounds of torque. Anyway, guys, this car was a beast. They don't make them like this anymore. It'd be an absolute luxury to have it. It was just sheer power at the prime. This was the prime year for this car. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you continue watching. I can make a part 2 to this video if you'd like. I'd like to go over the history of these cars. I've got way more to tell you about, just don't have enough time. But to give you an over idea of what the car came with, that's what it is. Anyway, guys, subscribe for more and keep watching.